My name is Jerry Gill. Today is December 14th, 2009. I'm visiting with Dwain Sehon, and this interview is for the O State Storage Project, the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. The interview is being conducted in Stillwater, Oklahoma, in the home of Walter Adams. And appreciate, Dwain, you taking time to visit with us today. And understand from talking to some of the family members that you're one of the historians in the family. Is that right?
Well, that's right. I really did get interested in it. I was in grandmother's house in this old book here, an old photo album, and it had tintype photos in it. And I was a young kid, and was really didn't even know that they made such a thing as tintype, and I just got interested in it.
Yeah.
And started collecting as much as I could.
Well, and of course, make kind of point out that Dwain, that you're it's probably a source of pride for you and your family, the Adams family, that your ancestors helped actually found the Stillwater community. We were two members of the Adams family in the first graduating class at OSU, and actually made the run of 1889. So a lot of history in the Adams family. Is that a special source of pride for you?
It really is. We talk about it. The family, where everybody. We don't go around the street saying we were the first ones to at OSU, but we really do have a lot of. We talk to each other, and at the events the university's had for the family, it's always been something that just makes you feel super.
You see, your great-great-grandfather, William H. Adams, and his wife Rebecca, the one that made the run into Oklahoma in 1889,
right.
and settled a quarter section, claimed a quarter section here, which would be the southwest part of Stillwater now.
Right, and that he was the research that I've done into his past. He was a very interesting fellow to research. He came from Tennessee and fought in the Civil War and was at several at Missionary Ridge, and we have records from even the National Archives on his records and places he'd been.
Which Missionary Ridge was that at Gettysburg?
I've forgotten that. But there was several places. One of them he would have been at Shiloh and Chickamauga. If the records are accurate, he would have been at those places. And he's a lucky man to even be here. We're all lucky to be here because of the danger he was probably in and that during the war.
Do you know what rank he attained, Dwain?
He was a lieutenant. We actually have the records of when he was signed in to the Army, and then to the point that he was promoted, and then later on he was captured as a prisoner of war, and I think he was at Johnson's Island, that's up near Chicago or something, and up in the area. They would put them in different places and then send them off somewhere, but and he made his way back to Kansas, I guess, and then came in.
Dwain, you mentioned that there's some interesting things about your great-great-grandfather, William. What are some other things? He was a surveyor, for example, one thing I know. Other things you could tell us about him?
The old newspapers and all the records he was one of the people that laid out the Stillwater town site. Walter has an old map, and I've got it in several of my records that show the original Adams claim, and then the square Stillwater area, and so he was quite an interesting fellow. We've actually even got a few old things that we believe are his, an old spyglass and compass and things that we believe were his property. So he left a lot of things behind.
Any of his old survey equipment?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know where that would have been, but just never saw any of it. Everything was small and would have fit in a drawer and a transit, and those other things are kind of large items, so they haven't survived.
Well, now he farmed in the Augusta, Kansas area before he made the run. There's things he did in addition to farming we talking about surveying? Anything else he did? Was he in business or anything?
Well, I haven't really researched the records while they were in Kansas. I was always looking more back in the Tennessee and North Carolina areas, where the family was originally from. I was kind of thought that Kansas was sort of a way station where they were waiting for the land run to start, but I'm not sure. But I don't know. Several of our other relatives on my grandmother's side of the family, I believe Walter also talked about it, also came in on the land run, and one of the family names Couts he had established some businesses up in the Kansas area. So I don't know for sure exactly how long they stayed there and what their occupations were.
So you don't know how long they were living in Kansas?
No, I haven't really ever investigated that. Walter may know, but I'm not. I just haven't spent time on that area.
So maybe we can back up a little bit and ask you, Dwain, a little bit about your personal experiences. Now, could you tell us a little bit about where you grew up, your family, some of your early experiences?
Well, my dad actually came here and attended the university after World War II. was getting ready to invade Japan. He was in the Army sitting on a boat getting ready to go in, and they dropped the atomic bomb. So I'm lucky for that, because I'm probably here as a result of that, because he didn't get killed. And he stayed in Japan and was in the military government there for several years, and then came back to Stillwater and met my mother, and she's my connection to the Adams family.
So your family tree, I mean, from William to, what was the line there in the family line?
Well, it's my mother was named Joanne Adams, which is Walter's sister, and then it's Joanne Adams to my granddad, to Walter Alonzo Adams, to William H.H. and Arthur Adams.
Arthur's one, so
my brain froze.
William H.H. and Walter, and then Arthur J.
Then Arthur, and then my mother, Joanne.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Well, did you grow up in Stillwater yourself?
No, I grew up in Chickasha.
Chickasha, okay.
And which is not far from here, and it was a good experience. I got to work on airplanes when I was a kid, and we were talking a little bit about my first flight experience. Was a little bit like Walter's, or the guy that was running the airport. And I went out to just take a ride, and he says, "What?" And I went to the right side of the airplane. He said, "No, you're on the wrong side." And he said, "Get over there." And says, "I can't fly. I'm not a pilot." And says, "Oh, that's where you're going." He was an instructor, and so the very first time I ever rode an airplane, I was sitting in the pilot's seat.
And you were how old then, Dwain?
I was probably about 14 years old.
This is in Chickasha.
Yeah.
What did your mom and dad do for a living?
They were both accountants. My dad had his own firm in Chickasha for almost since about 1950s.
And your father's name
is Ernest Earl Sehon.
Ernest Sehon.
He attended here at university in accounting back in the 40s.
And so when did you, now you had how many kids in your family, and siblings, brothers and sisters?
Just my brother Dwight.
Okay.
And he also came here for a short time, and then he went to Northeastern. He was a football player, and he had a better chance to start up there, so he was wanting to be on the field during the game. So
what year did you enroll at Oklahoma State?
I enrolled in 1972.
And then your major was?
I was in electronics, and then later on in electrical engineering.
Okay.
And
you graduated in what year?
I graduated in 1977, and I stayed on also in graduate school for some time. I didn't go ahead and get my master's degree here.
You took several hours in your master's program in electrical engineering. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was. I was also, while I was here, I worked for the university on the electrical engineering department on the windmill project, and then I went later on to work for a company here that one of the professors started. It's called Frontier Engineering. It's a little bit bigger company. There were only 3 of us back when it originally started. Ed Shreve.
Ed Shreve. Mm-hmm.
So we had, I've got an old business card with Frontier Engineering on it back when it was only a 3-man outfit.
Yeah. Well, back kind of maybe just a little bit and ask you, Dwain, did you, why did you choose to come to Oklahoma State University? Was it part of that Adams family experience?
It really was, and the people here were friendly. I don't, I've been to other campuses, but just when I came, just in my entire period of going through school, the students were just remarkable. You always find somebody, and as you're going through, you meet new people, but the people were just wonderful, the other students.
Well, I had to ask that question because there's another university just down the road from Chickasha.
It's very
that
close.
You had to drive through to get to Stillwater.
Yeah, and it was always good when you got past that point.
Good. So, what is that? Did the Adams family, the history of the Adams family, did that influence your decision also to come to Oklahoma State?
Yes, and really, when you're young, you just kind of go with what feels right, and it felt right. I mean, it's the family was here, and spent a lot of time here when I was a kid.
Can you tell us a little bit, Dwain, about your OSU experience, some of the things you did, some of your activities at Oklahoma State?
Well, the first 2 years stayed at Kerr Hall, which was a really great. I just enjoyed that very much, and we had some very good intramural teams, and we did. If we weren't first in football, we were pretty close, and several of the other. We had teams do everything good, and it was just I really liked the way they put people together with sort of similar majors and similar backgrounds, and whoever was assigning the students at that point was a genius because they put the right people together. So we all just had a great time.
Well, you were talking about flying. Were you in the Flying Aggies or in the aviation education program at all?
No, I really didn't. I got my license when I was real young, before I ever came. So that for me, there wasn't any. I was already a pilot when I was here, so there wasn't any benefit to me doing that. It's just something that I didn't ever run across anybody that was a Flying Aggie that I knew personally. So I didn't connect with them. But
did you fly out of the airport some there?
I've flown just from Chickasha to here mostly. I didn't go out and fly for enjoyment. I was really too busy with school.
Probably fairly expensive too for a student to be flying, right? Yeah. What can you kind of talk a little bit about how being part of the Adams family, how did it influence your perception of Oklahoma State and your OSU experience?
Well, the college has kind of been part of our experience ever since I can remember, because we would, even when I was a young kid, we would come to my grandmother's house, which is on the, at that point was on the homestead. It's at 12th and Adams, and we would all of us kids would be up on the top second floor of the house, and they would take us up around to see the lights at the university on Christmas Eve. And sometimes when and it's usually pretty late at night, and when we got back, Santa Claus had been to the house. He came a little early, came before midnight, so I had a lot of fond memories, and we played on the farm here when we were kids, and rode horses and did all the stuff a kid would do to enjoy himself, and threw mud and would swing on grapevines across Stillwater Creek and all sorts of things.
That's great. What can you share a little bit about after you left Oklahoma State? So you got your undergraduate, you got your bachelor's in electrical engineering at Oklahoma State, and then took some hours afterwards. What can you share a little bit of your experience after you left Oklahoma State?
Well, it was more beneficial for me because to take business classes. I was working on a master's degree in business. I didn't complete it, but I went to work in Fort Worth, and I was there at TCU, and I took classes there, and then also again in Seattle. Every time I got ready just to get close on my business, I would have so much time. Some project always came up. I never could finish it.
Yeah. So when your first job out of college though was
yeah, I was after I left the Frontier Engineering. I was probably at my first job when I was in college, but I went to General Dynamics and worked on. They build fighter planes, and I was in the engineering department and worked on F-111s and F-16s, and was one of the original guys on the F-22.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I was probably the General Dynamics team. They had little badges that had your number on it. I think I was number 31 or 2 or something like that.
So now, when did you go to work for General Dynamics?
In 79.
And where were you located?
In Fort Worth.
Fort Worth.
Yeah, but that was an interesting experience. The F-22, when it started, we couldn't. I was working on F-16 work, and we had several. The way it started, I was working on F-111, then I transitioned over to F-16. They were doing a big upgrade. They were more or less modernizing the computers on the airplane. They took old, really slow computers, and this was the generation where the microprocessor started. And me and several other guys were young. Gosh, we were incredibly young when we were doing it. And the F-16 C and D model, me and 5 other guys were the lead project guys on updating all the computers for the C and D model. And it really took it from being old technology to new technology, where it will do a lot now.
New avionics throughout the plane.
It was pretty much a complete rebuild of the avionics system.
Could you tell us a little about your experience with the F-22 project? That had to be pretty exciting.
Well, that was the project. It was kind of an interesting thing. I think I've told Walter about it, but we couldn't talk about it when it was first going, and my parents said I'd be going off on a trip or doing something, and said, "Well, what are you working on?" And says, "Well, just stuff." And we weren't allowed to. I worked on the airplane for several years before we were actually allowed to say that it existed.
Wow.
And it was fun. But actually, I got to see the airplane come together from just we designed it in a computer, but every day we would print out the design of the airplane on big long sheets of paper and have a meeting where I was in what they call the program office. I was a little bit more overseeing the efforts of others, and we would look at all the drawings every day and see if there was any problems. And so every day I would get to see the airplane laid out on literally saw it coming from nothing and pieces of paper to being built in the factory. I've even got little pieces of the original metal shavings from when it was being built. So it was really a once in a lifetime experience.
How long did you work with General Dynamics? Was that most of your career there, Dwain, with General Dynamics?
I spent, I don't know, I think about 12 or 13 years there. That was the span of the time. And then I went off and went to. I decided to go into the commercial side instead of the military side. So, and went to Seattle and found a company there.
No, surely not Boeing.
No, actually, I used to work with Boeing quite a bit, and that's kind of. I used to when I was working on the F-22, I used to spend time in Los Angeles and in Seattle. My responsibilities, I had to travel to all the locations, and spent time, and I sort of liked Seattle from that experience, so I went up there and
work with commercial aircraft design
yeah,
development.
it's business jets. So it was mostly I designed some what you call flight management systems with some of the first GPS capability in them, would let you land your airplane with GPS.
And what company were you working with?
I was working with a company called Universal Avionics up there, and we did one of the very first GPS landing systems, and it became standard equipment on Lear jets and King Airs and several other jets. It's on Gulfstreams and all sorts of things. So.
Very interesting. Well, kind of getting back a little bit maybe to some of the family history that we talked about, something that sort of a little question I had about, Dwain, you might help me with, is when you get past William H.H. Adams and you get to the boys in another level down, I understand two of the brothers, James Homer and Arthur, they went to Oklahoma State University, and then Oscar and Walter stayed kind of on the farm. But they were still connected some way to Oklahoma State University. Can you talk a little bit about how the family farm and how the brothers worked with OSU, or then of course Oklahoma A&M? But
from both my grandmother Muriel, and then the newspapers and other things, the farm has been pretty much connected with the university since the university started. It seemed to be a social place at the first, back when the old accounts in the papers said that they had a lot of parties and things from the university. People would come down and enjoy having a picnic down by the banks of the Stillwater Creek on the farm, and then Walter Adams, which is William H.H. Adams' son, and R. Walter's granddad he was the brother of the first graduate, but he was actually quite connected with the university as far as he had planted the trees and pecan trees and did many grafting experiments with the pecan trees and also the walnut trees. He was quite a horticulturist, and I always felt that it was just a shame that he didn't get to attend the university. He might have. He would have been a wonderful researcher, and the university later on has sent. Over the years, have sent people down to get grafts, and he was always connected with the university, always very supportive of the university and working with them, agriculture and horticulture departments or whatever. And my grandmother related all sorts of tales about him.
He was kind of into scientific farming when it was pretty systematic in his farming. And
very much. So.
Now, did I understand too, Dwain, did he cross was it walnut and pecan?
He had there's one tree on the farm, and it's very interesting. It was, all experiments, you always learn something from everyone, and his experiment where he crossed a pecan tree and a hickory tree.
A hickory tree, okay.
It made a very, very hard little nut that it would have made a good pool ball. It was, but it wasn't very good to eat. But that was one of the things you learned something from, but his other experiments went really well.
And I understand he had a large pecan grove, maybe several hundred trees.
Yeah, I should refer to my uncle, and I guess about, what would you say, 30 acres of trees is approximate, and there's a map, which is here at the house, and that shows the location of each tree and what kind of tree it was, if it was grafted or not. So he's a very meticulous person, my mother used to, when they had dinner at his house, they said that he was very very proper and meticulous, and would and some of his brothers that attended the university, they were also, you could tell that they were smart people. That's what she said.
Good gene pool there.
Well, I hope so.
And I think in Dwain, an earlier conversation, you were saying that a lot of some of the agronomy professors actually came down and took some samples of some of the pecan trees that he had grafted, because they were kind of selective breeding, if you will. They were such good plants, good trees.
Yeah, and even entomology department used to come down, and instead of when we were kids, we always just see these strange things in the trees, and they were traps to get different types of insects. So I mean, there was cooperation with the university, since all through time, it appears.
What do you? I remember we were talking earlier a little bit about William H. Adams and some of his background, and so he actually laid out the first plot of the city of Stillwater. Is that right?
Right.
And then was it his son that was county commissioner?
Yes, it was Walter Alonzo Adams, and he also was the man that was planted the pecan orchard and did the grass, and so he was a very he was an active guy in the community, and I don't know how those guys used to do all of that stuff.
And you brought up a point I had understood. He was, when I say prominent, was very much engaged, very involved in the Stillwater community. I understand, wasn't he?
Yeah, there's several articles that we've got from you always have obituaries, but you have other articles too where he was involved in.
He was active in the Methodist Church, is it?
That's right, and some of the old family was named for. I think there was a Wesley Adams that was from the Wesleyan.
John Wesley Methodist. There you go. Yeah. What? Trying to kind of get a sense of you've researched the family a little bit, and how to the families generally, and then asking from your perspective, how important is that association of the Adams family with Oklahoma State University? Is it important? Is it something that you feel special about? The sense of pride of that long, 4 generations now of Adams having gone to Oklahoma State University?
Well, I think everyone in the family is really, really proud, and we've had quite a few graduates. It is something, and the family just tremendously appreciates the display in the alumni hall and the Adams cafeteria. And, it just means a lot to the family, and it just reinforces that bond. I think it's.
Do you have a family also, Dwain? Kids yourself?
I've got one child that's my wife Cheryl's child before we were married, but he's also an engineer, and he's been very successful. He's off. Right now he's attending Harvard.
Oh my gosh! Wow. Where did he do his undergraduate work?
He did his undergraduate work at Vanderbilt. He went to got a mechanical engineering degree from there, and he was interested in going east, so it seemed to be a good place for him to go.
So you can't take credit for the genes.
No,
on
I
that
can't.
side, right?
But he wasn't a direct descendant of the Adams clan, so I guess he's straight off the path there. But
Well, that's
he
okay.
just didn't know about it.
I think we've got a bunch of Longhorns also in the family down in Texas, as I understand, but that's okay. What you sort of researched the family, so I'm asking you kind of some general questions, maybe a little bit, Dwain, that you can refer to. What are some special things that stood out in your mind about the Adams family as you, researched the history of the family?
Well, I guess just going backwards to, Walter and his cooperation with the university and the things that he did was, that was, to me, was pretty impressive. And then William H. Adams, which is his father, the things that to come all the way from Tennessee and to have fought in the Civil War, and he just has and to have surveyed the town of Stillwater. He had just an incredible set of things that he accomplished in his lifespan. And going back even further, I guess his father was Wilson Adams, and it was in the Tennessee area. And then the oldest one, Elijah, we found that he was born in 1766, and I was surprised that there's records going back that far. It's before the United States was a country. And we actually even found that there's a cemetery in Tennessee, and it's the Elijah Adams Cemetery, and he's buried there. So, so it's there is just a tremendous amount of history, and we just keep finding more and more filters in it all the time. So we think the history goes even back further. It looks like it's connected all the way back to a fellow named Henry Adams that was in the Massachusetts Bay Colony in the 1600s, and it goes even further back. We're still working on all of the connections, but the interesting thing about Henry Adams at the Massachusetts Bay Colony, he was also the ancestor of John Adams and John Quincy Adams.
Wow.
And I think also the ancestor of Samuel Adams, which is, I think Samuel Adams and John Adams signed the Declaration of Independence. And Samuel was the guy that organized the Boston Tea Party. So we may be connected to all those people, but we're still trying to figure that out. But it looks kind of possible right at the moment. It goes back that far.
That's pretty exciting genealogy, isn't it?
Yeah, it really was. I was really excited to see that. So, we're going to keep on working on it, and it looks promising because all of the families in Tennessee, they were all within a very small area where I was telling that cemetery the Elijah Adams Cemetery is. And we were talking earlier about even going back there and looking up some of the records in Tennessee, and then back in North Carolina. It'd just be a fascinating thing to do. And,
in the Civil War records of William, and he was pretty active in several battles you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, his records. There's where he started, and then there's one record where he was at Missionary Ridge, and several different places during the war. But, interesting life. A lot of people their lives are more interesting than ours today. You consider how far they've gone and what they were through.
Those pioneers were pretty tough, weren't they?
Yeah.
They survived the Civil War.
Yeah.
Survived the frontier, and
I think that the old is and I should really ask Walter we've got an old double-barreled shotgun, and it's from, I would date it to the late 1800s, or in the area of the land run. I kind of believe it. I always want to think that's the shot. He had that shotgun with him when he came here and staked the claim. Keep the bad guys.
Claim jumpers off his property, huh?
So it's one that's so old you wouldn't dare fire it, but it's an old twisted barrel, and it says you don't. When I've read the things I've read on it, said you could only shoot black powder in it.
Those things exploding.
Yeah. So, but we wouldn't dare shoot it anyway.
When kind of moving forward a little bit of time, anything you picked up on some of the family members going, from Arthur and James Homer going forward. I know that Arthur and James were in business together in Ardmore for a while, I think, and both fairly successful. I know Arthur was certainly in I think in energy business and exploration.
And one of them was a stockbroker. There's a card where he had a stockbroker business, and unfortunately in the 20s.
Bad timing.
Yeah, but there's the guy. All the brothers seem to have spread out and have done well. I haven't really, since there were people, their direct sons and grandsons were still alive. I haven't really done a lot of extra research. We've got a lot of pictures of them. We have a very good picture library here in the house of the entire family, and it's always good to write names down on pictures. We've got some of the oldest pictures that are in the album that I showed you when we first started the tape.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few of them in there, or almost half of them, that there's no names, and we kind of are trying to figure out who could have that person been. And one thing I want to say to people is it's very important to write names on the back of your pictures when you take them. Somebody later on will want to know who they were.
Absolutely. Well, do you kind of follow up on that thought of some of the branches? When you have your reunions, do you get representatives from each of the four brothers, if you will, that made the run with William H.H. Adams?
We, the first time we had a reunion in New Mexico, I think I did a map of where everyone was from. And it was amazing how many states. California, I lived in Washington at that time. I think Jerry, he lived in Washington, D.C. We have people all over the country.
And the four brothers, of course, two of them we went to Oklahoma State, but then they were in Oklahoma for a while. Then went to Texas, and then Walter stayed. Walter Alonzo stayed here on the farm.
Right here on the farm.
Then which brother went out to New Mexico?
Oh, gosh, help me out.
Oscar. Okay. Was that part of the New Mexico connection? Was Oscar's family out there?
Right.
Does still a lot of them live in the Mexico area?
Yeah.
No, actually, it was Bob Adams that took us out there.
That was the later on. I think he was talking about the old one that went up. Bud was saying something about he was got some land in New Mexico.
Mm-hmm. So when you have your reunions, occasionally you get pretty good representation from all branches of the family.
The first one, we had people from all over the country, literally. Yeah. It was amazing that everybody was so interested in cane.
About how many people attended that first one?
50. Mm-hmm. I'd say a good 50.
And there was one from every family.
Yeah, we had just incredible representation.
And we talked about earlier, there's been 4 generations now of Adams family members and about 43 or so students that have enrolled at Oklahoma State. And we have one currently enrolled at OSU right now.
Mm-hmm. And my brother went for a while, and my wife attended, and just all of my cousins have. So it's just a pretty good representation there.
We might have worked with you, Dwain. I'm trying to recall when we did the display in the Traditions Hall there in the Alumni Center on the Adams family.
Mm-hmm.
I think we highlighted in boldface all of the students that had either attended or graduated from Oklahoma State.
And there's more since that was done. I was married after that original display was done, so my wife would be added to one of them, and some of my cousins and even their children now have gone, and they just were little fellows at that point in time, and weren't college age yet. So it keeps on going. It's an ongoing thing.
So were you that 4th generation?
Let's see. I would be the 3rd generation. I would be. So.
Thanks.
Yeah, because
Well, actually, you're
fourth generation, I believe.
From William H.
Yeah, oh, yes, I mean, as far as attending the school.
To school, third generation OSU.
Yeah.
Well, even though it's like 3 generations back, do you still, we've asked this, but I'm kind of asking a different way maybe this time, but you'd think that the first family, you think of James, Homer, and of course Arthur, I mean, pretty special in that very first class. But so you drive back second, then the third generation, is it still pretty special though to think about being part of that Adams, OSU Adams family, historical family?
Oh yeah, it really is. Every once in a while, I have we were talking about that place in Norman before, and one day every once in a while, well, why are you for the Cowboys? And I says, well, sort of have to be. If your great grandfather laid out the town of Stillwater, you better be a Cowboy.
Get the Stillwater OSU roots. That's exactly right. Amen. Amen. Dwayne, kind of one more time again, is there anyone else you talk about, some of the family members going way back to the Adamses in Massachusetts, but coming back up a little bit, is there anything that kind of stands out in your mind about that you'd want to mention about the Adams family, specific individuals, events, things like that?
It seems like the ones that it's just the accomplishments of the ones that we're aware of. There's a few we don't know much about. There's a Wilson Adams, who was Elijah Adams' son, and we're still finding more about Elijah himself, where he was from North Carolina originally. But there just isn't a lot of information other than they were farmers and in good standing in the community. And we're still, I believe we'll run across more information on the very old family members. And we kind of have talked about William H. and coming in from the war, which is, I've just been totally impressed with what he did, and then his son Walter Alonzo. I mean, working with the university and that's really not very well known. He was a man that just really supported, from everything I've heard, really supported the university just his whole life, and I believe could have done great things if he.
A great researcher, sounds like.
If he would have been able to fulfill that. He's the oldest guy, so I think he kind of had to work on the farm and help support the family and keep the farm running. So
it sounded like while he didn't attend Oklahoma State University, he was very closely connected with, engaged with the university throughout his life.
I believe so. So there's a very definite connection between the farm and the university.
Well, I asked this question of Walter earlier, kind of asked you, what do you think is the Adams family OSU legacy? What do you think of? What legacy has the Adams family left?
Well, I think that maybe it would be persistence and trying to just go out and do your best. I think that a lot of our family members have learned a lot. I personally learned a tremendous amount when I was at the university, and I think that can be repeated. The more family members you talk to, the more you'll get that same story. Just learned a lot and just was able to go out in the world and stick with it and get things done.
It sounds like, Dwayne, that you've stayed, in some ways, even though you lived quite a ways off, you've stayed connected to Oklahoma State University most of your life. I mean, in terms of being involved, being a member of the Alumni Association, coming back for family reunions. Is that an accurate statement for you?
Well, I've probably more of the reunions. I've just been gone so much. I was just completely, I was gone out of the state for about 30 years. And when I came back, I'd always try to get up to the campus and look and go to football games if I could. I believe I was here a couple of times when we beat OU, and that was a good thing.
That's always a good thing. Always. Yeah. Well, Dwayne, what have we not covered that you'd like to bring up? There's surely some subjects maybe we've missed from your historical perspective. Anything you'd like to bring up or for us to talk about?
Well, the most I don't know what I can add other than I would really like. It's just my own. I hope that we'll be able to get a lot of the material in the hands of the right history department or people that will preserve it. And we just have a tremendous amount of it, or getting more. It's we kind of hit and miss, go along and do a little research, and then get busy doing other things, and then come back to it. But we really have hit the high points, but there's always a lot of things that are maybe not in that direct line, but are other fun things that are there, and it's always, you can always spend just tons of time covering that, but sometimes it's easier just to look at the newspaper clippings and photos and things to go through that.
Well, it's interesting. It's pretty, I won't say totally unique, but certainly very distinctive and very unusual that we've tracked a family from the first graduating class at a major, Oklahoma State University, one of the major land-grant university in the United States, to be able to track the two, the graduates, the family in through 4 generations is a very fascinating study, and it's one that I hear you saying we really need to capture and get into archives at Oklahoma State University.
Yeah, I really, it just, me personally, I just really think that it's a great thing just to know where the people came from that were the first ones at the university, and what the student population looked like of the first class, and their backgrounds. It's just a fascinating topic to get into, because we were really a pioneering school, and the people that attended were just rough and ready to go, and wanted to learn and go out and take on the world. So, and that spirit just kind of continues.
Well, let me close with a couple of questions. And one I'm going to ask you. I know you're pretty modest, but I mean, from our conversation, and you really were in some pretty high-profile kinds of very important work in engineering with F-22 and F-16. How do you feel that your education at Oklahoma State University did it stand you in good stead? Did it prepare you for your career?
It very much did. You always, when you go off in a profession like I was in, you always learn when you get on the job. But one of the things as I got into management, I would try to help our recruiters bring new people in, and I did frequently talk to our recruiters in the course of bringing in young engineers and hiring them for the company. But the recruiter, an older gentleman who had been there for a longer time than I had, he asked, we were talking about my background, and he said, well, where did you get your degree? And I said, Oklahoma State. He says, oh, that's good. We like engineers from Oklahoma State, because that's a tough program to get through. I mean, if you get through that, you're good.
Great.
So that was the ultimate comment or compliment from our personnel guy. He said, if you got through the program at Oklahoma State, we knew you were going to be able to contribute.
Great.
So
great story. Well, Dwayne, finally, what favorite memories of Oklahoma State University? As a graduate and since.
Well, it's always, it kind of comes back to people, and there was it was just a good time. I mean, not from a sense of being, just a sense of friendly people, people that would, you're all aiming towards the same goal, getting a good education, just that. So there's never period of time that's the same as when you're going through college. The whole rest of your life, it's that's sort of a spirit, and you never realize it when you're going through it at the time. But I think as people go through their college experiences, you meet people and make friendships that are for the rest of your life. Will know people, and off later in business, you'll meet those same people again. For the first 10 years after I graduated, I would meet people off in O'Hare Airport that I'd gone to school with, or often in different places I was traveling, and see them. Hey, how you doing, and who you work for, and all that. So we still kept in as much as we could. It's easier for kids now with email and things. It's pretty hard to stay in. When we were going, is once you got out and you lost a phone number, you're pretty much out of touch. But it was always a pleasure for me to meet another person I'd gone to school with, and while I was at the university, and kind of go through old times, and always a lot of fun.
Speaking of some of your favorite memories, was there favorite hangouts you had on campus and off campus? You were in school in the 70s, right?
Oh yeah,
pretty dynamic time at Oklahoma State.
There was
there's something you can tell about.
A lot of exciting things. There was a few historical things going on back at those times. I think that was back when the streaker night got started, and fortunately, I was just an observer, not a participant.
Yeah, certainly you can say that on camera, right? Okay.
Yeah, I can say that on camera, and there were a lot of places on Washington Street was really full of good restaurants. There was a place called what was it? Something.
Willie's was down there, I think.
There was a Coachman and
in the patio,
and several places, and one place just had these incredible nachos, and I've never had nachos that good since.
Did they have any liquid refreshments with those nachos?
Well, they seemed to have something. It was in pitchers, but I don't.
we won't put it. And I should ask you.
In adequate quantity.
Yeah, okay. Well, in conclusion, what are you doing now since you retired from General Dynamics?
Well, I mostly work with the stock market. I actually just sit there and do that,
Okay.
and I do other things. I help when I'm asked, I go in and contribute with the school system there in Chickasha. I've been on several planning committees with their building, and I participate in things with the city and planning activities where they want some participation of people in the community to come in.
Do you live in Chickasha?
Yes, I do. So I try to help out as much as I can if I can contribute. So.
Dwain, appreciate it very much, and again, if there's anything else we haven't covered, just be sure to mention it. Okay?
Okay. Yeah, we'll. I'm sure that we can give you some more information and work with you on it. So.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.